That's one topic that I wanted to comment also. Now that we're engaged in this, is the difference between group worship and prayer. I think that one thing is group worship, and we all come together, and prayer becomes something very personal.
I don't know if I should share this story, but the woman I was dating when I was about 22, she was a real Baptist, and they were into speaking in tongues and stuff that I just didn't get with. But even in that environment, when we were all worshiping together, it still felt good. You
Okay.
know, even though I didn't agree with a lot of what was going on and the little groups that you would get into, there was still a good feeling of camaraderie. And I have to admit, because I had already been reading the Urantia book for 3 years, I pretty much sealed my opinion of what speaking in tongues was all about, which is, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that there was a sense of communion. And when I've gone to Urantia book group sessions, study groups, some have prayer before they start, others do not. It never feels bad, but I don't feel like I have to have group worship in order to have that connection with God. And I'm not, and admittedly, I'm not a real big churchgoer because I know that I'm the kind of person that would like to raise my hand and ask a question. And they don't like that,
I got into that same situation, and I think that it's good. And I think we commented this the other day that one thing it's the personal connection, that the divine within, that personal relationship with God, that's very personal, and that's the thing with prayer. And I think worship is when you share that joy, and it's not sharing to convince somebody or to sell to somebody, but it's share to and sharing is very, there's no agenda, there's no hidden agenda. That's the thing, that's why it's a gift. Why a community and a group worship, when there's nothing that you're selling or you're taking, it becomes sharing. So I think that's very good. But
Yeah.
I agree with you, it doesn't substitute the individual and the personal
Yeah, it's like the
element.
difference between, think about it in terms of family. Always think about things in terms of family. There are times where you want to just have time alone with dad. And it's great that everybody gets together and celebrates family together, the family of believers or even non-believers. I think if we designated a day of prayer where everybody on that particular day prays for peace, maybe peace would come. Maybe somehow just in our collective desire to find peace, if it truly is a collective desire to find peace, maybe then that would enable God to fill our hearts and we would all seek harder to find peace.
That's the transformative effect that prayer has, and that's one of the characteristics of prayer. So imagine if we all, like you're saying, maybe not only a day but a habit of prayer. Like you're saying, there's a gland. It's something physical that happens to you. So if you stimulate this, and we get into this
Spiritual
positive
habits is
feedback,
what they call
yeah,
it.
and it's a positive loop. A positive feedback
Yeah.
loop. What
They
happens?
say in Islam, they pray 5 times a day. 5 times a day in Islam, they pray. And I say, why stop at 5? Why not 50? Why
Yeah.
you cut yourself short? You only call your mother 5 times a year? 5 times? You know what I'm saying. In other words,
No,
what's
and
with the limit? What's
well,
with the quota?
that's the communion that we were talking about, that Jesus had, or the prayer that he had. And it wasn't the prayer and that structure that I mentioned, but it's the communion. The communion is that where you feel them next to you, and you have like a one-on-one conversation. It's weird, and I know what it, and I think we mentioned this before. In Spanish, the word for Jesus is Chuy, and when I was younger
Chewy.
and in my 20s, I would say, "Hey, Chewy," and I would treat
Yeah.
him like
Right. Hey.
my age,
Right.
and he
I
was
think he likes
pushing me.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was my buddy, and and I see him as that, even though he's our father, he also was our brother, our older brother when he came
Yeah.
to the world.
Yeah.
So
And
that's
we
the
have an
quality
extra
that.
kinship because he chose our little world to live out life. So he'll know what it was like to have 5 toes and fingernail problems and, hair and follicles and, all that. So he'll have a lot of commonality with us and that'll never be taken away from us. We'll always have the
Exactly.
unique Urantia experience. So that's kind of a cool aspect of it. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
tell
I
you,
agree.
it's a tough world. It's not a veil of tears, but it is a tough world, and you've got to have some resilience. Otherwise, listen, to all my friends and people who know, we could eliminate much of mental illness and fear and apprehension if we would start teaching not so much passage and verse, but principle and idea of having that relationship with the divine within. You know,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
start
Totally.
there, that's where you start, and have
Totally.
the faith of
Totally.
knowing that it's true. If you can, and I say this to people who may not think much about it, but try it for a week. Just try praying once a day. You don't have to cite certain words, just whatever comes into your mind and
It's a
put it
dialogue.
out
It's
there.
it's
Yeah,
it's a, it's a
and it
dialogue,
will change your life. Yeah.
and I know that some of us maybe don't have a good relationship with our parents, or maybe are fixing that relationship, or with anybody that we love. And maybe you don't have that conversation or that intimacy, but as we've been presenting in this program, you have to build a relationship. You have to start talking. And once you start talking and you start building that relationship, but first you have to say hello. God is always out there. It's us that need to knock on the door, and it will
I was
open.
going to say, yeah, you got to be willing to knock on the door first. And then there's also the aspect of, you don't want to become a spiritual fanatic either. And sometimes you got to be careful not always to be running away and seeking shelter from the storm. You're also encouraged to act. So you can make your supplication, you can put it out there, what you think is you want from God, but then you've got to do something too. You also have to have action. And sometimes I tell people, if you would just do something for somebody else, you would be less depressed, because when you are doing something for somebody else, you are not thinking about yourself. And then after you've had that experience, you're not sitting there feeling sorry for yourself. You're sitting there feeling good because you did something for somebody else.
I, I,
So
I
those are
I
just,
like this action, and it's very important that you take action. It's not only that you pray, and this is something that I learned from Jordan Peterson and his books and his lectures, and something that I applied. And he always said, hey, you've got to have faith, and you've got to have, put everything on that faith, but you have to work for it. It's not that it's just going to happen. You have to do the work and do the what it takes to get to that, and have that faith.
faith in action. That's what I say.
Faith in
So
action, exactly. Well, I think this is basically our time, Jim. It was really a pleasure to have you here to have a conversation on this topic, which is very important, and really help our viewers understand that they can pray. It's very simple. It's a conversation. There's a divine spark within us that, there's a connection. You just need to light it, and that's going to show you the way.
and also I think now is because of what's going on, and we see it would be a good time. We could sure use the prayers of our fellow humans for the people who need it the most. And right now, there's way too much bloodshed, way too much horror in children's hearts. And, maybe we have to go through this. I don't know what the answer is, but we're at a pivot point in human history. And it's ours to lose. And this is the time to lean heavily our unseen friends and the Father. And I think we'll come out of it okay. Jesus put a lot of trust in us.
Yeah.
He really did. We're a really backward planet, had a very scarred history, but he made it through, I guess. And he tried to teach us that it'll be okay. So I'm willing to trust in that.
And that's having faith, and that's putting your trust in Jesus and God. And yeah, I think and praying, and then eventually things will work out. And one thing that's very important is to have this brotherhood, to serve each other, and to have this communion with each other as well. That's the part of understanding the fatherhood of God is understanding brotherhood of men. Once we
Yeah,
understand
and you
and we
can't
see
have one
ourselves,
without the other, right? And that's
exactly.
what I think what's missing today. Maybe that's why we're having the problems we're having. If you think about it, maybe if we were more spiritual on our approach. I mean, even the Urantia book says war has become obsolete. We've got to find new ways to resolve our differences. Otherwise, we're going to end up annihilating each other, just like the green and the orange of the Sangiks annihilated each other. So, I mean, we've got to think about our kids' futures, and it's not easily solved. But I believe if we put a little bit more spirit in it, I think we'll be all right. I hope we'll be all right.
Yeah,
Right?
I
Yeah.
think we will. I
Okay.
think we will. Well,
All right.
thanks.
Well,
Thanks
anyway,
a
good
lot.
luck with your thing. And I'm so honored. I will tell everybody that this is the first interview that somebody's actually interviewed me. So I feel
Yes,
really
I'm
special.
honored. I'm honored. So
Well,
thanks a lot, Jim. And well, thanks to everybody for watching us. Thank you for giving us a little time. And if you liked it, I never say that you have to do this. Only if you liked it, please subscribe, share, put a reminder, and we'll see you next time. I'm Santiago Kneeland. This is the Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. Carpe diem, seize the day.